Welcome, my brothers and sisters, sons and daughters, to the real world with Elder George. I'm Elder George, and will share a message that will not only help you deal with the stress, tensions, and anxieties of living in Western society, but will also motivate you to help transform society from materially oriented to family supportive. There are three requisites for a happy, healthy, and harmonious human environment, and they are spiritual awareness, gender understanding, and family focus. Western society does not promote any of these requirements, yet they apply to all the issues facing us. They constitute what I call the real world, and you will hear me refer to them a lot. Today, I will discuss the principle of gender. In the last 8 podcasts, I discussed various aspects of society that are all deteriorating, and I mentioned on each podcast the prerequisites for a happy, healthy, and harmonious human environment consisted of spiritual awareness, gender understanding, and family focus. Today, I will begin to explain the universal principle of gender and why knowledge of this principle is necessary to rebuild society. Gender makes possible all movement in the universe. It came into existence upon the creation of the universe and is an integral part of all universal activity. Movement results from an assertive influence acting upon a receptive entity. Two receptive entities cannot produce movement, nor can two assertive entities produce movement. As an example, imagine an empty water glass sitting upon the table. It is receptive. If you go on an errand and return, it will still be there. If you go to bed, it will still be there in the morning. If you go away for the weekend, it will still be there upon your return. It will stay there forever unless something moves it. A something that will move it is your hand, which acts as the assertive influence necessary to create movement. If there were 2 glasses in this experiment, they still wouldn't be able to create movement. If there were 2 hands and no glasses, there still wouldn't be any movement. Movement will only occur if an assertive influence acts upon a receptive entity. The assertive influence is the masculine principle. The receptive entity is the feminine principle. Examples of action created by gender are the masculine North Pole sending a charge to the receptive feminine South Pole, creating a pregnancy, which produces magnetism. The masculine anode in a battery sending a charge to the feminine cathode creates a pregnancy that produces electricity. In all existence, all movement results from an assertive influence moving the receptive entity. Religious texts throughout the world illustrate the principle of gender, but by referring to man and woman, or male and female. But it is a universal principle. In Genesis, the creation of Adam represents the masculine principle. Adam is the source of everything. From Adam came Eve, who represents the productive and nurturing feminine principle. Further on in Genesis, we find Lamech had two wives. The significance of this information being that men provide for women. It is their obligation. We find further along in the scriptures the directive for men to care for women and children, widows and orphans, and the elderly and infirm. The primary function of the masculine principle in this world is to provide for the well-being of society. We are on an extensive journey to reach the Godhead, and we can only stay on that journey if we propagate ourselves. The masculine and feminine principles are referred to in the Torah, Bible, Quran, Tao, Mahabharata, and most other religious texts of the world. The masculine and feminine principles are fundamental to the functioning of the universe and account for the subject being treated in religious texts. All things, knowledge, wisdom, power, and structure emit from the masculine principle. There cannot be two sources. There is but one. All the previous discussions which I had on the breakdown of Western structures result from the waning assertiveness and influence of men. The statement, "We don't need men anymore," reflects abject ignorance on the part of those who say it. It represents the decay of society from which restoration is unlikely. The principle of gender is fundamental and intrinsic part of universal activity. There can be no movement or action of any sort without the interplay of gender. All structures, ethics, standards come from men. When male influence subsides, civilizations collapse. Our future podcasts will explain how the collapse of the masculine influence caused all the problems for women and children that were described in previous podcasts and videos. Stay tuned. There's a lot ahead. You can find additional information on today's subject by going to my website at www.mensaction.net and tap the About Us tab, which contains the essay index. Under the letter A, you will find a 5-part series of essays titled A Gender History of Europe, which will provide considerable supplementation to this presentation. There are 5 essays on that. Thank you for tuning in to The Real World with Elder George. Please log on to my website, www.mensaction.net, which contains 170 essays and 46 videos, all relating to the real world. It also illustrates my 2 books, which contain more information on the subjects that we address. You can be part of the effort to bring about change in our society by sharing this message with your friends and by tuning in to my next video and/or podcast. Working together, we will survive. Dear viewer and/or listener, an important part of our message consists of an explanation of the principle of gender, which is elaborated on in my 2 books. My first book, Dear Brothers and Sisters, Gender and Its Responsibility, explains gender differences and the realization that they are manifestations of a universal principle. My second book, A Gender Handbook for Western Man, is not a handbook as such, but it does approach the gender issue on a more technical basis, which I felt would be more receptive to the Western mind. Both books can be obtained quickly from Amazon or Barnes and Noble. I hope that you will invest in both and increase your awareness and understanding of the principle of gender and its importance in your life. Thank you.